Welcome to GROC Mountain Bike Patrol local training. In this set of slides, I'm going to talk about what are the responsibilities for a patroller for GROC Mountain Bike Patrol. We're going to go over the first 35 slides on this video, and then there are some scenarios at the end that we'll talk about when we're all together. So historically, we came out of the National Mountain Bike Patrol that was part of the International Mountain Bike Association. And to give credit where credit is due, some of the slides in this slide deck were created, or the beginnings of them were created by IMBA and NMBP. And the idea of the National Mountain Bike Patrol was volunteers who partnered with land managers and assisted, educated, and informed trail users, not just mountain bikers, but all trail users. And the goal is to enhance the recreational experience. So the National Mountain Bike Patrol was created in 1995, and like I said, was originally part of IMBA. And at that time, when they disbanded, there were 60 patrol units, 500 individual patrollers. And now we are part of the larger ski patrol organization. When NMBP disbanded, they turned it over to National Ski Patrol, and we're part of a much larger organization now. So our local unit was created in 1996, and the original goal was because we were trying to get access to Letchworth, the East Side trails, the Finger Lake trails, and this helped us to provide this trail advocacy. We could provide this patrol unit to help out with the trails. Now, in October of 2018, we joined the Genesee Valley region of National Ski Patrol, and we remain a local chapter, local unit of National Ski Patrol. So we patrol 5 core parks that GROC has agreements with the land managers. Dry Root Park in Ontario County, Irondequoit Bay Park West, and Tryon Park, which are now almost connected on the west side of Irondequoit Bay, Ontario County Park, which is south of Bristol, and Stid Hill Wildlife Management Area, which is across from Bristol. And these are the 5 core parks where we have agreements and we need to patrol. We also have looser agreements with another 5 places. And these areas, we don't have direct MOUs, but we do and are allowed to go out and patrol them. That's part of the Genesee Valley Greenway Trail, and more importantly, Harriet Hollister Spencer Recreation Area, High Tour, which might move to one of the core parks, the primary park soon, the Letchworth Finger Lakes Trail, that's the east side. We do not patrol on the west side where there's all the pedestrians and all the users. And then Whiting Road Nature Preserve in Webster. And so we can patrol these areas, but it's a little looser. So outside of these 10 areas, we do not patrol. We don't just go out to any park and patrol. It's only these 10 areas we're allowed to patrol unless we're specifically invited on the property and that invitation is cleared by the GROC board and the patrol representative. So sometimes we'll do events where we're invited in by somebody hosting a race or something like that, and we'll go do their event, but we are invited in by them, and that's cleared by the board and the patrol representative. Make sure we have the resources and the ability to do the patrolling in that area. So our goals primarily, and I know some of you come from ski patrols, our primary goal is really serving as a goodwill ambassador. If you've seen mountain hosts or ambassadors at ski resorts, that's a lot of what we do. We try to provide goodwill for the mountain bike community. We also monitor trail conditions for safety. We help with mechanical issues, and we're all trained in emergency first aid, so we can help with emergency first aid, and then we help to run events that GROC puts on. So in this slide deck, we're going to talk about our duties. what we do for GROC and the land managers. We're going to spend a little time talking about trail and environmental issues, get you thinking about trailside bike repair, talking about first aid and emergency care, and only going over that very briefly here. What's your expectation? You get your first aid training elsewhere, not in this local training. And then talk about communication as a bike patroller. So our duties, we're going to talk about our responsibilities, the qualifications that you have to maintain, your own risk management, and I want to emphasize that we are not the trail police. We are there as trail ambassadors to serve a goodwill function, to help people who need help. We do not do any enforcement. If something's going wrong, we contact GROC or we contact 911. So your responsibilities as a patroller, you adhere to the patrol schedule, and we'll talk about that next. You always need to be careful to represent GROC Patrol and GROC in a professional manner. Whenever we're wearing our uniform, when we're patrolling, we have our uniform on. When we have our uniform on, we're patrolling. Those two go hand in hand. And when you're patrolling, you need to be a true professional because we are representing GROC, we are representing our patrol, we are representing ski patrol, and we are representing mountain bikers in general. And of course, there's tension between mountain bikers and some other trail users. So we always have to be the bastions of goodwill. We have to maintain our patrol equipment, which is our first aid and trail repair or trailside repair equipment, as well as our own equipment, our bike, our helmet, our gloves, all that. We have to wear our patrol uniform when patrolling and then assist injured, ill, or lost trail users, meaning we have to know our way around the trails or at least be carrying a map or a map program to help people find their way out. It happens more than you think, even on some of the smaller trail units. We need to log our hours. One of the important things that the board likes us to do is to make sure to have our hours logs updated regularly because they use those hours to help us get more resources from the counties that we serve. And we need to complete incident reports when there's a major incident. We need to be careful about how we interact with trail users and other emergency responders, and of course, the GROC trail crew and GROC leadership. We often don't even know who we're working with on the trail. So again, being professional is important because we might be riding next to one of the trail crew or trail leaders. We might be riding next to a GROC board member or a land manager and not even know it. We are always helping trail users to use the trails more safely and more responsibly. And then, of course, we monitor trail safety, meaning if there's something wrong, if it's minor, we fix it. If it's major, we report it. So what GROC expects from us for our patrolling? We patrol our primary parks, one of those 5 primary parks, at least once a week for an hour. So we get out once a week in uniform with our tools and first aid pack, our equipment ready to go, and we get out on patrol. Now, if we're on vacation away, of course, you don't have to worry about that week, but in general, once a week for at least an hour. We patrol at least 2 different parks each month, so we're not always on the same parks, and we patrol 1 or 2 events each season. Generally, the commitment is 4 hours of events. That's usually 2 short events or 1 long event. And then we patrol all primary parks, those 5 parks. We try to get to all of those at least once each season. The secondary parks are just bonus. So the qualifications. Number 1, you have to have ski patrol training. There's 2 different courses that we accept as part of our patrol. Either the minimum, outdoor first care, or you can also take outdoor emergency care. Both of those require recertifications. Outdoor first care is a recertification every other year, and outdoor emergency care is a recertification every year, a third of the content every year. You, of course, need to have your AED and CPR certification, and you need to be recertified every other year for that, and you need to complete your local patrol training, which is this, and be mentored by an experienced patroller. You have to know and follow the local policies and procedures, and you'll have a link to our policies and procedures manual. You need to know your personal limitations. Our expectation is that you can access any of the trails in the area. You don't need to be able to ride all of the trails or all of the features. So like at Dryer Road, one of the trails is the Den, and I don't ride one of the features anymore. I've given it up, but I can get access to it. And most of our trails here, it's pretty easy. If you're an intermediate rider, you can get to most locations just simply by getting your bike close and then walking if you need to. And then, of course, you need to know how to maintain your equipment, at least the basic maintenance. So what does GROC do versus what is expected for the patroller? GROC takes care of liability insurance for us. They actually pay annually a premium for our liability insurance. That is a rider on top of their regular liability. They purchase our first uniform shirt, and they reimburse us for, at the end of the season, for ski patrol host level dues. Right now, that's $60. If we have met our patrol requirements, back to those patrolling requirements, once a week, 2 parks a month, being a GROC member, all those kinds of things. The patroller pays for the NSP membership and then pays for the GROC membership. The patroller pays for training costs, which is our Ski Patrol First Aid and our CPR, and maintains any other training that's required. We don't really have a lot of other required training, but there are other potential training courses that you can take usually. And of course, the patroller's responsibility is to maintain the bike, the repair kit, and the first aid equipment. So you're responsible for knowing your limits, for managing your risk, and making sure you're safe. The first thing is that you need to be safe out there, and then you need to think about your risk management for GROC after that. So know the difference between your personal group insurance versus the patrol group insurance. Your personal insurance covers health care, covers your liability, covers those things. The patrol group insurance is responsible for covering GROC's liability. In case something were to happen, we were to get sued because of our patrol activities. You're expected to dress for the weather conditions, warm weather in the summer, cold weather if you're patrolling the winter, though patrolling in the winter is not expected. Our season is generally mid-May or early May, depending on when mud season ends, until about mid-October, depending on the weather. And you're expected to carry appropriate water and food, and a little extra water and a little extra food in case somebody needs it out on the trails. Now, we also work events. 2 typical events that we work are GROC events or races. So GROC events are generally the Burning Bike Festival or the Love Your Trails trail maintenance events. And the races are generally put on by bike shops, and we go out and help with their first aid. When you're working in events, first of all, there's a lead patroller for every event. Know who that is and work with them, your communication prior to the event. Not when you get to the event, but work with them ahead of time. And there will be communication from the patrol director before the event so you know who's the lead and who else is on the crew. Let the lead patroller know when you arrive and ask what they need and ask about transitions. Find out when the event and where the event is occurring. So we work sometimes events at Ontario County Park. And on Ontario County Park, there's a lot of trails that are spread out. Know where in OCP that the event is occurring so you can be near the event and know the route. And one of the things, just a little aside, is the Love Your Trails events. One of the things that GROC does, they put on Love Your Trails events at each of the parks they maintain each year, and we patrol them. Now, many of us on patrol also do trail maintenance work. We serve both. But when we're patrolling a Love Your Trails event, it's patrolling, not trail maintenance. You're not out there digging, you're not using a shovel. You're helping the people digging, you're helping the people shoveling, and you're helping the people who are using the trails to avoid the locations where the work is being done. Now, sometimes I know patrollers will patrol for a couple hours at a Love Your Trail event and then take off their jersey, get out of their patrol gear, and then go work the LYT event for a while. That's okay. But while you're patrolling, your goal is patrolling, not working the event, not working as a Love Your Trails event member. Now, you ride around, making sure to keep near the event. It's not just riding, it's riding around during your scheduled time, making sure you're paying attention to what's going on at the event, and you're talking to other people so they know the event's occurring and let them know where it is. And if you need to, you can help block off parts of the trails when they need to be blocked off. For trail crew days, make sure you're checking in several times where the trail crews are working and check in. Do they need water? Do they need tools? Do they need food? Do they need first aid support? And of course, there's a lead patroller or an organizer for the event. Make sure you let them know when you get there. That was the beginning. And make sure you let them know when you leave. So land management. We as patrollers sometimes have to interact with land management. So let's talk about the patrol and land manager relationship and liability insurance again. Now, the land management relationship is very important, and GROC has really good relationships with the land managers in our area. These are generally the Parks and Recs directors, Monroe County Parks, Ontario County Parks, and we've been very successful, GROC as an organization, very successful getting trail access by working closely with these land managers. Now, the key for our patrol is that our patrol doesn't work directly with land managers because GROC maintains the memorandums of understanding between the land manager and GROC. And then we actually have a separate MOU between patrol and GROC to say, here's what we do for GROC. So that GROC is really the one managing the MOUs. But when we're patrolling, we have to remember all the time, we represent GROC, we represent Ski Patrol. And when you're out there patrolling, if you don't know who the land manager is, remember, you may actually run into them. You may actually ride right past them. And they are paying close attention to what we're doing as patrollers out on the trails. Even when we don't know who they are, they notice us because of our uniforms. Now, the reason that the land managers like to have the patrol out there, and the reason GROC continues to be very supportive of our patrol, is we act as the eyes and ears for the trail crew, for the ones who go out there and fix, repair, maintain, develop, and improve the trails. So we have to report trail conditions. Now, we are monitoring safety and reporting the conditions through our Facebook page, through our log, through the patrol representative. So we talk about what the conditions are and make sure that when there's a problem, the trail crew is notified as soon as possible. We can certainly provide trail management advice if we see a safety issue. We're not there to provide trail management advice in general. The trail crew knows far more about developing trails than most of us do. And they practice it, they learn it, they spend time developing their skills. So we can certainly talk about trail safety. If there's an unsafe condition, make sure to let them know and give some advice about how they might fix it. We are out there. The reason the land managers like us is because we can provide assistance to trail users. One of the things that I do regularly, surprisingly, is make sure people can find their way home. People lose track of where they are all the time, and you have to just guide them out of the trail. It's usually a simple 1-minute chat to give them directions. It usually doesn't take much work. Now, we can also perform minor trail maintenance, but really, our goal is not the main trail maintenance. It's just to fix things that are unsafe. GROC Trail Crew, there's a whole separate division of GROC that's responsible for the core trail maintenance. We don't do any rerouting of trails. We don't destroy or change features. We do clean up trails again around safety. So if you're on a corner and there's a big rock or a branch that's running parallel to the trail, you can knock those off. If there's a tree branch that's fallen on the trail and you can move it yourself, or a rock that you can move yourself, certainly do it. If it's a big log, it's not your job to move it. It's your job to notify the patrol director or the trail crew to let them take care of the major issues. So our job is out there as another set of eyes and ears for the trail crew and monitor trail safety, make sure that the trails are safe. Now, liability for the patroller. Patrollers, as volunteers, are protected by the Good Samaritan Act, which is really valid in all states. It's most states, but really all states in the U.S. right now. You're protected by the Good Samaritan Act. And this means that volunteers who are acting within their skill set, within their level of training, are generally protected from liability. And in fact, nobody has ever won a lawsuit for anybody who's acting as a volunteer first responder. The caveats are avoid willful neglect and abandonment, two important issues. Willful neglect is doing something that is beyond our skill set. So we are not, in movies, it's great. Somebody knows how to do a tracheotomy with a pen. We are not taught that. We don't know how to do that. We are not trained in that. If we do a tracheotomy with a pen and kill somebody, it's not the movies. We are liable, and the Good Samaritan Act wouldn't cover that. The other thing we have to be careful of is abandonment. Whenever we're wearing our uniform, whether we're on the trails or not, we are recognized as somebody who has an additional skill set. And abandonment is leaving somebody and not completing some helpful behavior. So that also is not protected by the Good Samaritan Act. So abandonment and willful neglect. Now, GROC, of course, provides, I talked about this earlier, liability insurance. Our training activities, we get liability insurance through NSP, and most land managers, of course, have liability insurance for the parks that you're on. This doesn't cover your health, it covers the liability in case something were to go wrong. Now, trail issues. There are different types of things we have to consider as patrollers: the environment, the social issues, and the rules of the trail. So the environmental issues are really, a lot of people think that mountain bikes cause a lot of trail damage. It's not the mountain bikes. Rolling actually doesn't cause a lot of trail damage. It's two main things. It's poor drainage, number one, and skidding that damages trails, and the poor drainage makes them worse. So we want to avoid mud. We don't ride when it's muddy out, and we certainly don't want to skid. And we want to encourage other riders not to skid and not to ride the trails when they're muddy. And that way, our trails remain sustainable for a much longer period of time. In fact, many of our newer trails in the area, Ranacoit Bay Park West is a perfect example, is developed with sustainable trail building in mind. So those trails really last and stay. So now, if you're going out to patrol and you get on the trails and you're leaving tracks, it's time to turn around. We are always the ones that have to follow the rules perfectly. Do not ride the trails if you're leaving tracks. It's going to damage the trails, and it's not our time to ride. We can ride when they're dried out. Social issues are about safety and respect. We have to be the exemplars for safety, and we have to show that we respect all users of the trail. A lot of these trails that we ride are developed and maintained for the mountain bike community by mountain bikers, but they're open to everybody. All trail users, hikers, people out there running, people out there, and some of them on their horses. Whatever it may be, if it's valid on the trail, they're valid trail users, and we are there to interact with them safely and respect their trail use. And I've said this before, but always remember, when you're out there in uniform, when you're patrolling, you represent GROC to the entire trail user community. Now, we do follow the IMBA rules of the trail. These are for our riding. We use these when we're out there patrolling. We ride on open trails only, so there are parks around, like Mendon Ponds Park. You do not patrol those. You don't ride in your patrol uniform anywhere where the trails are not legal. I'm not going to tell you what to do on your own time, but when you're patrolling, you always ride open trails only. You leave no trace, so no garbage, not leaving big tracks. If there's tracks you've left, you keep your bicycle in control, and you yield to all other trail users. That's our expectation. People on horseback, especially, because somebody on horseback, a bike can really scare those horses. So give them right of way. And certainly the hikers, the bird watchers, they're out there too, and it's our job to let them go by and yield to them. Try to avoid scaring animals. This is one place I take exception with IMBA. Never scare animals. I have scared a few deer as I've come around corners and the deer standing there in the middle of the trail, but try not to. Do your best. Avoid the animals as best as you can, and always plan ahead. Be looking out further in the trail for what's coming rather than looking right in front of you. Now, trailside bike repair is one of our expectations. If you don't know how to do trailside bike repair, most of the local shops will do some training with you. There's not a lot that we can do with our trailside bike repair. It's derailleur adjustments, maybe fix a broken chain, um, true a wheel, a little bit of help truing a wheel just to get them out of the trail. Very minor things, change an inner tube, help with a flat, those types of things. So you got to carry your tools and your spare parts that you need. I carry a spare tube and a patch kit. I carry a 29-inch tube because I ride a 29er. I don't carry a 27.5, and I don't carry a 700C, and I don't carry a 26, but I do carry a patch kit so I can help them. I carry 2 CO2 cartridges and tire irons and a multi-tool and some zip ties and some other things like that. Everywhere on our trail networks, it's pretty easy to walk out. So you can always help somebody walk out. And when helping somebody with trailside bike repair, one of the most important things is to consider the liability. It is our job as patrol to help someone, to assist someone, to educate someone, and possibly loan them the tools. It is not our job to actually do the work. Once we start touching their bike, then if they get injured, if something breaks, we can be held liable afterwards. So when doing trailside bike repair, make sure you're doing it for them, helping them. Now, these are basically the skills you need: flat repair, chain repair, derailleur adjustment, saddle adjustment, brake adjustment, and basics, not rebuilding wheels or things like that, but basic spoke and wheel repair. We do have a suggested toolkit that comes from originally International Mountain Biking Association. Most of these tools you'll have if you carry a multi-tool and a few other things. So I've already talked about the legal issues with trailside bike repair. Avoid performing the mechanical help whenever possible, but use your common sense. If you're really helping somebody who's in trouble, make sure that they can get out of the trail. That's the important thing. One of the other expectations for mountain bike patrol is to be prepared to deal with first aid emergencies. You already do have first aid training or will get first aid training through the ski patrol courses, outdoor first care or outdoor emergency care. So this should just be a quick refresher. Now, I'm a alpine patroller in the winter and I'm a bike patroller in the summer. We don't do a ton of emergency care on our bike patrol, but we do have to do some every once in a while. I do carry a slightly lighter first aid kit in the summer than I do in the winter, but I do still carry a fairly thorough first aid kit. So here is the old guidelines from National Mountain Bike Patrol for the first aid kit. And again, in your first aid training, you'll get these. And if you've had outdoor first care or outdoor emergency care, I'm sure you're already packing these kinds of things in your first aid kit. So next is, according to NSP, what a basic first aid kit should be for somebody who has outdoor first care training. If you have outdoor emergency care training, your first aid kit probably looks more, mine does at least, more detailed than this. Now, we've already talked about the Good Samaritan laws. They vary from state to state, but in New York State, it's pretty, the Good Samaritan laws have always been held up. It's a pretty strong law. Now, when you're doing your first aid, you can do first aid within your level of training, but any medications, lotions, bug repellents, salves, anything like that should never be applied by the patroller. If you have Benadryl, you're carrying it, and they ask for it, if you give it to them, you can give it to them, I guess, but you don't want to in any way be the one to apply this. Don't give them epinephrine if they're in anaphylaxis. You can help them administer their epinephrine. You can't give them Advil, but they can take Advil. So it's a little bit of a different view. We are not allowed to give any medicines. Now, communications. I know some people who come from ski patrol are used to using radios. We tend to work alone or in pairs, and so we work across 10 different locations, and 12 really when you consider some of the events we run. We don't have radios because we don't have repeaters built in and systems built in all these locations. Most of the places we patrol, we can use our cell phones to communicate. So we just use our cell phones. That's expectation as a patroller that you're carrying your cell phones. At some events, there may be radios, and we may have soon a set of radios to use for some events. But right now, the radio communication comes from the event organizers, not from the patrol. So you must know the important technical aspects of using a cell phone to call 911. Again, if you've had first aid training, you know this. If you haven't had it, you will get this in your first aid training. Know how to use a radio at an event. And if you don't know, ask. Say you've never used the radio before. What do they do? What are their expectations? How do they do it? And then, of course, one of the key communication skills is you need to be able to interact effectively with respect with all the trail users, hikers, horses, bikers, and whoever else is out there. Now, this is details for anybody who wants it. NSP and NMBP have specific frequencies that we can use. So if you're interested in this, we can talk about this another time. The next set of slides have to do with scenarios to try to figure out what you would do in this situation given this training. These scenarios we will go over face to face. We'll talk about them and give you some